You guys have asked me for a while to do some more reading. I just hadn't done it because I really wasn't sure what I could do. This year, 2024, I've ran through a lot of dumb crap, and one being an actual copyright strike. So I've had to take a lot of time just to figure out, okay, what can and can't I do without being at risk of somebody trying to take down my channel. I think that for legal reasons, whatever you want to call this, I don't think that reading Susan Atkins' grand jury testimony is a no-no, but we'll see what happens. So this is definitely going to take... I'm going to record this over multiple days, definitely not all at once. I've never recorded anything all at once, but here is my attempt at reading Susan Atkins' grand jury testimony. The grand jury of the County of Los Angeles, State of California. The people of the State of California, plaintiff, versus defendants Charles Manson, Charles Watson, Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Sankston. The reason why it says Leslie Sankston is because at this point in time, it was before her actual name, Leslie Van Houten, was known, at least to law enforcement. This transcript I downloaded from Cielo Drive and their archives. So if you enjoy this and many of the Manson things that I do read about and talk about, I highly suggest you visit that website. Cielo Drive is one of the best websites out there for information, photos, and court updates even about the Manson family. Appearances include Aaron H. Stovitz and Vincent T. Bugliosi, Deputy District Attorneys of the County of Los Angeles, representing the Office of the District Attorney. Ann F. Smith, duly appointed and sworn as the official shorthand reporter of the grand jury. The reporter's transcript of the grand jury proceedings include Friday, December 5th, 1969, and Monday, December 8th, 1969. This part is Volume 1, which runs pages 1 through 171. For the sake of listening, I will skip over the witness list, people mentioned, and the photograph list, because for the sake of listening, that's just not very fun to listen to. It states on here that all grand jury exhibits were received into evidence on page 379. For us, though, we start out on page 7. Los Angeles, California, Friday, December 5th, 1969, 10:08 a.m. The grand jury reporter, Ann F. Smith, was sworn by the foreman to correctly take in shorthand and correctly transcribe, to the best of her ability, all of the testimony given by each and every witness testifying in the matters now pending before the grand jury, and to keep secret and divulge to no one any of the proceedings of the grand jury. The foreman starts out by having said, "At this time, I would like to read the foreman's statement. Name of possible defendants: Charles Manson, Charles Watson, also known as Charles Montgomery, Susan Atkins, also known as Sadie Mae Glutz, Linda Kasabian, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Sankston, and Steve Grogan, also known as Clem Tufts. Matters to be considered in connection with above-named possible defendants. Between the late evening hours of August 8th, 1969, and early morning hours of August 9th, 1969, the following 5 persons were murdered by either gunshot and/or multiple stab wounds at the Roman Polanski residence, located at 10,050 Cielo Drive, Los Angeles, California. 1. Abigail Ann Folger. 2. Wojtek Frykowski. 3. Stephen Earl Parent. 4. Sharon Marie Polanski. 5. Thomas John Sebring. The prosecution intends to prove by direct and circumstantial evidence that suspects Charles Manson, Charles Watson, Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel entered into a conspiracy to murder any and all persons at the residence, and pursuant to the conspiracy did, in fact, murder said victims. Sometime between 2 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. on August 10th, 1969, Lino LaBianca and his wife, Rosemary LaBianca, were murdered by multiple stab wounds inside their residence located at 3301 Waverly Drive, Los Angeles. The prosecution intends to prove by direct and circumstantial evidence that the aforementioned 5 suspects and Leslie Sankston and Steve Grogan entered into a conspiracy to murder any and all persons inside a residence they had not yet selected. That, pursuant to the conspiracy, they selected the LaBianca residence and proceeded to murder Mr. and Mrs. LaBianca. Any member of the grand jury who has a state of mind in reference to the case or to any of the parties involved which will prevent him from acting impartially and without prejudice to the substantial rights of any of the said parties will now retire. There being no response, all grand jurors present remained. The foreman stated, "The district attorneys in charge of this hearing are Aaron Stovitz and Vincent Bugliosi. Gentlemen, you may proceed with the hearing." Mr. Stovitz: Richard Caballero. Our first witness will be Richard Caballero. The Sergeant-at-Arms states, Richard Caballero. Richard Caballero. Richard Caballero, called as a witness before the grand jury, was sworn and testified as follows. The foreman: Will you state your full name, please? Richard Caballero. Will you raise your right hand and take the following oath? You do solemnly swear that the evidence you shall give in this matter now pending before the grand jury of the county of Los Angeles shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God? I do. Will you please be seated? By Mr. Stovitz, who will be asking questions. Will you state your name again for the record, please? Richard Caballero. Caballero. And are you an attorney at law licensed to practice in the state of California? Yes. And have you been recently appointed by the Superior Court to represent a Susan Atkins in the defense of a murder charge pending in the Santa Monica Superior Court? Yes. Pursuant to that appointment, without telling us what you said, did you interview Susan Atkins? Yes, I did. Again, without telling us what was said, during this conversation, did you learn certain information from Susan Atkins? Yes, I did. Now, have you advised Susan Atkins as to her constitutional rights? Yes, I have. And is that not only pertaining to the so-called Gary Hinman case where Mr. Hinman is a victim, but as to all matters? Yes, I have. And have you advised her that she has a right to remain silent and not testify before this grand jury or any other court proceedings? Yes, I have. And has she indicated to you what her feelings were? Yes. She will testify, and I have so advised her also. To your knowledge, has anyone exerted any pressure or coercion to cause her to testify? No. To your knowledge, has anyone exerted any coercion upon any close friends or members of her family to cause her to testify? No. Have any threats at all been made to her to cause her to testify? No. To your knowledge, is she testifying freely and voluntarily? Yes. I now have a photograph which we will ask to be marked as Grand Jury Exhibit 1. May this photograph be marked, Miss Secretary, as Grand Jury 1? It may so be marked. I show you Grand Jury Exhibit 1. Is this a fair representation of Susan Atkins, your client? Yes, it is. What other names, if any, do you know her by? Sadie, S-A-D-I-E, May, M-A-E, Glutz, G-L-U-T-Z, which is the name she is booked under at Sybil Brand Institute. I have no further questions. The foreman. You are admonished not to discuss or impart at any time outside of this grand jury room the questions that have been asked of you in regard to this matter, or your answers, until authorized by this grand jury or the court to discuss or impart such matters. You may be excused. Thank you. Susan Atkins, please. The Sergeant at Arms. Susan Atkins. Susan Denise Atkins, called as a witness before the grand jury, was sworn and testified as follows. Will you state your name, please? Susan Denise Atkins. I want to give you this admonition first. You have a right, at your own request, but not otherwise, to be sworn and make any statement on your own behalf that you may desire. You are informed, however, that if you are sworn and make any statement, such statement, together with any questions that may be asked of you by the members of the grand jury or the district attorney, will be taken down and become a matter of record. And in the event an indictment is filed against you on this charge, that record may be used either for or against you at this time of your trial. You are not obliged, however, to make any statement whatsoever, unless you desire to do so. Any statement that you make must be completely voluntary on your part, with this admonition in mind. Now, that you have been informed of this right, do you still want to be sworn and testify? Yes. If you will raise your right hand, I will give you the following oath. You do solemnly swear that the evidence you shall give in this matter now pending before the grand jury of the county of Los Angeles shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Would you please be seated here? Thus we begin the examination, which is started by Mr. Aaron Stovitz. And he starts off by asking, is it Miss or Mrs.? Miss? Miss Atkins, did you understand the statement of Mr. Bishop, the foreman of this grand jury? Yes, I did. Did your attorney, Mr. Caballero, explain to you your constitutional rights? Yes, he did. Are you freely giving up your right to remain silent? Yes, I am. Are you freely willing to testify before the grand jury? Yes. Now, do you understand that if you do testify that you may incriminate yourself? Yes, I know that. Do you understand what the word incriminate means? Yes, I do. Are you still willing to testify knowing that you are not being given immunity, and you are not being freed of any of the charges that you may incriminate yourself about? I understand this, and my life doesn't mean that much to me. I just want to see what is taken care of. Would you kindly adjust the microphone as you would a telephone? If you will talk into this, it will be easier for the members of the grand jury to hear you. All right. You understand this has to be as accurate as possible because you are under oath? Yes. You understand the difference between what you actually saw yourself, what you actually heard yourself, and what somebody told you happened? Yes, I know the difference. How old are you? I am 21. All right now, Miss Atkins, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Bugliosi, who's going to ask you some questions, and think carefully about the questions he asks you. If you do not understand the questions, say that you do not understand. This is not an intelligence test. If he asks you a question before you have completed your first answer, just raise your hand and tell us, wait a minute, I haven't finished my first answer. Then he will stop, and you can finish your answer. Do you understand that? Yes. Mr. Bugliosi, would you kindly proceed? And thus starts examination by Mr. Bugliosi. Good morning, Susan. Good morning. Are you a little nervous? I'm scared to death. Well, most people who do testify in court are a little frightened, Susan, so it is not unusual. Just sit back and relax and answer my questions to the best of your ability. If I happen to ask you a question, Susan, and you don't know the answer right away, rather than answering quickly and possibly in error, I would appreciate it if you would take your time and think about these questions before you answer. Will you promise to do that? Yes. We have a lot of time, and we'd all rather have you think before answering, and therefore answer correctly, rather than answering without thinking. Will you do that? Yes. Now, these folks who are seated to Mr. Stovitz and my left, and right behind me, are members of the Los Angeles County Grand Jury. Do you understand that? Yes. These folks want you to tell them what happened, Susan, and they want you to be completely truthful with them. Do you promise to do that? Yes. Here we have a photo, Mr. Foreman, of a male Caucasian. May it be marked Grand Jury Exhibit Number 2? It may be so marked. Susan, I show you a photograph of a male Caucasian marked Grand Jury Exhibit Number 2. Do you know who was shown in that photograph? Yes. Who is that? Charles Manson. Do you know Charles Manson? Yes, I do. When is the first time that you met Mr. Manson? A little over 3 years ago. And where did you meet him for the first time? In a house on Lyon Street in San Francisco. Lyon Street is in the Haight-Ashbury district? Yes, it is. What other name, if any, did Mr. Manson go by? At the time I met him, just Charlie. Would you please relate the circumstances surrounding your meeting Mr. Manson? I was living in a house that primarily consisted of young people living together. We all shared our means of support, and I was sitting in the living room on the first floor of the house. And a man walked in and had a guitar with him, and all of a sudden he was surrounded by a group of girls. Well, I sat and I watched, and he sat down on the couch, and I sat down to his right, and he started to play music. First, he just started playing similar songs and went through Spanish, a couple of Spanish songs, and sung a few songs. And then the song that caught my attention was The Shadow of Your Smile, and he sounded like an angel. You're referring to Charlie Manson? Yes. And when he was through singing, I looked up at him, and I asked him if I could play his guitar, and I wanted to get some attention from him. I don't know why. I just felt I wanted some attention from him. And he handed me the guitar, and to myself I thought, I can't play this. And then he looked at me and said, you could play that if you want to. Now, he had never heard me say, I can't play this. I only thought it. So when he told me I could play it, a common expression, I blew my mind because he was inside my head. And I knew at that time he was something that I had been looking for. I didn't know what it was. I was exactly looking for, but he just represented something to me inside, and I went down and kissed his feet. I don't know why I kissed his feet. I just kissed his feet. And then, would you please relate, Susan, your relationship with Mr. Manson thereafter? Well, a day or so later, he came back to the house, and I knew it was him, and I went running downstairs to meet him at the door. And we walked back upstairs, and he asked me if I wanted to go for a walk with him, and I said yes. And we walked a couple of blocks to another house in Haight-Ashbury, and he told me he wanted to make love with me. Well, I acknowledged the fact that I wanted to make love with him, and he told me to take off my clothes. So I uninhibitedly took off my clothes, and there happened to be a full-length mirror in the room, and he told me to go over and look at myself in the mirror. I didn't want to do it, so he took me by my hand and stood me in front of the mirror, and I turned away, and he says, "Go ahead and look at yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. You are perfect. You always have been perfect." He says, "This is in body form. You were born perfect, and everything that has happened to you from the time you were a child, all the way up to this moment, has happened perfectly. You have made no mistakes. The only mistake you have made are the mistakes that you thought you made. They were not mistakes. What happened next? He asked me if I had ever made love with my father. I looked at him and kind of giggled, and I said, no. And he said, have you ever thought about making love with your father? I said, yes, I thought that I would like to make love with my father. He told me, he said, all right, when we are making love, imagine in your imagination that I am your father. In other words, picture in your mind that I am your father. And I did. I did so, and it was a very beautiful experience. You did have sexual intercourse with him? Yes. You are also known, Susan, by the name of Sadie Mae Glutz. Is that also correct? Yes. Did Charles Manson give you that name? Yes. Did he tell you why he wanted to change your name to Sadie Mae Glutz? Yes. In order for me to be completely free in my mind, I had to be able to completely forget the past. The easiest way to do this is to have to change identity by doing so with a name. I had started to pick out a name, a very long, French-sounding, sexy name, in order to, I don't know, in order to, well, in any event, he gave me the name Sadie Mae Glutz. Did Mr. Manson call himself the devil at all? Yes, he did. Did he call himself Satan? Yes. Did he call himself Soul? S-O-U-L? I understand your question. I want to make certain, because I don't want to say he did if he didn't. Yes, that's exactly what I want you to do, Susan. Think before you answer. I know I have called him the Soul. Have other people called him Soul in your presence? You do not recall at this moment? No, I don't. Did Mr. Manson ever call himself Jesus? He personally himself never called himself Jesus. Did you ever call him Jesus? He represented a Jesus Christ-like person to me. Did Mr. Manson talk about Jesus quite a bit? Yes, he did. What did he say in that regard? He said Jesus Christ was but a man like any other man, with awareness of the world and the universe, and he gave up his life willingly, so that we could live in order to become the same. Not Jesus, but the same consciousness that Christ was endowed with. We must be willing to experience the same thing Christ did for us. Did you ever hear anyone call him Jesus in your presence? No. How long did you stay in San Francisco? Not more than a couple of weeks right after I met him. Where did you go from there? We got on a school bus. When you say we, you, yourself, and Mr. Manson? And 4 other girls. 4 other girls? Marie Teresa Bruner, Lynn Fromey, Ella Bailey, Patricia Krenwinkel, and myself, along with 3 or 4 males. I don't remember their names. Mr. Foreman, I have here a photograph of a female Caucasian. May this be marked Grand Jury Exhibit Number 3 for identification? It may be so marked. Susan, I show you Grand Jury Exhibit Number 3 for identification, a photograph of a female Caucasian. Do you recognize who is in that photograph? Yes. Who is that? It is Patricia. What is her last name? Krenwinkel? You have to answer out loud, Susan. Krenwinkel. Who were in the bus besides Charlie? Just some men that came along. I don't remember their names. Where did you go in this bus? We started traveling south. Do you know whose bus it was? Charlie's. How long did you travel in this bus? On and off for a good year and a half. Basically, where did you travel? What area of the country? Well, we went all up and down the coast of California, to New Mexico and Arizona, Texas and Nevada. Did you feel, Susan, that you were a real woman before you met Charlie? No, I felt I was lacking somewhere. You didn't know what? No. Did Charlie show you how to become a real woman? He didn't show me. He gave me in other words, I gave myself up to him, and in return for that, he gave me back to myself. He gave me the faith in myself to be able to know that I am a woman. During this 1 to 1.5 year period on the bus, were all of you girls Charlie's girls, so to speak? We were called Charlie's girls, but Charlie often told us, in fact, every day he told us, you people don't belong to me. You belong to yourself. Do you personally think that you belong to Charlie? Yes. Did he have sexual intercourse with all of you girls? Yes. Were you jealous of the fact that he was having sexual intercourse with the other girls? In the beginning I was, until I came to an understanding that he was only making love to the girls for the purpose of love, and also to give them back to themselves also. Did he instruct you girls to have sexual relations with each other? He didn't instruct us, no. Did he ask you to? No. But you did? Yes. Did you always try to please Charlie during this period? Yes. Was there any limit to what you would do for him? No. Were you very much in love with him, Susan? I was in love with the reflection, and the reflection I speak of is Charles Manson's. Were the other girls also in love with him, to the best of your knowledge? Yes. Did all of you girls want to prove yourselves to Charlie? I cannot speak for other girls. Did you try to prove yourself to Charlie? I did attempt to prove myself to Charlie, and every time he would see me trying to prove myself to him, he would say, "You don't have to prove yourself to me. You don't even have to prove yourself to you." Did you and the other girls always do whatever Charlie asked you to? Yes. And if we didn't, it's because we didn't want to. As a general rule, you did whatever he told you to do. Is that correct? Yes. What was it about Charlie that caused you girls to be in love with him and to do what he wanted you to do? To be slavishly obedient to him, so to speak. Charlie is the only man I have ever met. I'm not taken away from any other man. On the face of this earth, the only man I have ever met that is a complete man. He will not take any back talk from a woman. He will not let a woman talk him into doing anything. He is a man. How else would you describe Charlie? He has more love to give to the world than anybody I have ever met. He would give himself completely to anybody. Do you think Charlie is an evil person? In your standards of evil, looking at him through your eyes, I would say yes. Looking at him through my eyes, he is as good as he is evil. He is as evil as he is good. You cannot judge the man. Did Charlie ever tell you that he was evil? To my knowledge, no. Did he ever say he was as good as he was evil? No. This is my opinion. It isn't even an opinion. It is what I say. Did Charlie call you girls his slaves? Starting about a year and a half ago, he said, I have tricked all of you. I have tricked you into doing what I want you to, and I am using you, and you are all aware of that now. And it is like I have got a bunch of slaves around me. And he often called us sheep. Did you live, Susan, at the Spahn Ranch in Chatsworth? Yes. And when did you move there? About a year and a half ago. And you moved there with Charlie Manson and the other girls? Yes. Were there any other girls at the ranch when you arrived there? No. Did other girls move in there after? Yes. Did Charlie seem to know these girls? He got to know them immediately. Did you stay at the Spahn Ranch continuously up through the summer of 1969? Yes. Did you leave Spahn Ranch from time to time, however, and go to other places? Yes. But you'd always come back to Spahn Ranch? Yes. What is Spahn Ranch? Spahn's Ranch is a very beautiful place. The buildings are dilapidated and falling apart, but the surroundings is like a wooded area. It is up in the mountains. It used to be a movie ranch, and George Spahn owns it. There's quite a few acres of land, and he still rents out horses for people to go horseback riding. George Spahn is an 80-year-old man? Yes. He is almost totally blind? Yes. Did you girls take care of him? Yes, we did. You took care of his lunches and things like that? Yes. He had his little home there on the ranch? Yes. How did you survive on the ranch, Susan? By that, I mean, what was your means of livelihood? Where did we get our food and things like that? Yes. Well, as people would come and people would want to drop out of sight, they'd give us mostly everything that they had, and we'd usually give away. In other words, we never held on to anything. We always gave it away. In fact, we gave away more than we ever had. Our food, a lot of times we bought it, and it's going to sound very strange. The supermarkets all over Los Angeles throw away perfectly good food every day. Fresh vegetables and sometimes cartons of eggs, packages of cheese that are stamped to a certain date. The stores are only allowed to keep them until that date. But the food is still good. And us girls used to go out and do garbage runs. That's what we called it. You would pick up this food and take it back to the ranch? Yes. And cut out the blue spots and check it over to see that it was good food. Did you do any begging at all for Charlie? Begging other people for money? We used to go out and panhandle. By that you mean ask people for money? Yes. Did Charlie ever ask you girls to steal anything for him during this period that you were on the ranch, such as credit cards or other things? No. I took it upon myself. We'd get programmed to do things. Programmed by Charlie? By Charlie, but it's hard for me to explain it so that you could see the way I see the words that would come from Charlie's mouth. They would not come from inside him. It would come from what I call the infinite. Well, what did he indicate to you with respect to stealing goods at all? Did he tell you girls to... He just said we needed credit cards, and we need that, and we could use some of this. When he said that, you assumed you had to go out and get them for him. Yes. And also anything that we saw that we needed, it was up to us girls. We knew this, to take care of our men. How did you do that? What did you do? Well, we went out on garbage runs and we went and panhandled, and one time one girl and I put on dark clothes and took it upon ourselves to do this. Charlie had no knowledge of this. We went out and creepy crawled. Creepy crawled? Yes. Explain to these members of the jury what you mean by that. Moving in silence so that nobody sees us or hears us. Wearing dark clothing. Wearing very dark clothes and move at night. Where did you go? We hitchhiked over into, now I forget the area, and we were scared to death. It was something neither of us ever experienced, and wanted to experience it because everybody else in the family was doing it. They were doing what? Creepy crawling? Entering residences at night? Yes. And taking things inside the residences. They never actually took anything inside the residence other than money. I never actually saw any money that they got from inside any of the residences. You and this girl on one occasion did enter a residence and take some money? Not a residence, no. What was it? There was an automobile parked on the side of the road. I opened the door and looked inside the glove compartment and saw some credit cards. I reached in and took them. Did you use those credit cards? Personally, myself, I did not. Did you turn the credit cards over to Charlie? I turned them over to Charlie, yes. At the ranch, that is, Spahn Ranch, did you and the other girls continue to do everything Charlie Manson wanted you to do? Yes. I want you to understand that Charlie always told us, you do what you want to do. If you do not want to do it, do not do it. But when he would ask me to do something, I felt like I had to go ahead and do it because I know he would do the same thing for me. Otherwise, he wouldn't ask me to do it. Apart from the manner in which you survived on the ranch, Susan, what type of life did you lead on the ranch with Charlie? You and the other girls. It was very peaceful. It was beautiful. Very, very peaceful. We used to... What did you do? Well, we took care of the ranch and George and took care of each other. We all made love with each other, got over our inhibitions and inadequate feelings, and became very uninhibited. We used to dance all the time. In the nude? No. Did you ever walk around in the nude? No. We were out in public, we couldn't. Spahn Ranch is somewhat secluded? Somewhat secluded, but we never walked around in the nude. We used to gather, in other words, we would all go through our changes during the day and do what we were doing that day. What do you mean by changes? Oh, changes. When you say changes, you mean doing different things during the day? I mean, like, if I didn't like what one of the girls was doing, I'd go over, I'd move about and say, you're stupid for doing that. That is what a change is. And what she did, that is what she did, and what I thought about it was irrelevant. To what she actually did, it didn't matter. And then we'd all gather at night and sit down and start singing, and Charlie would always play the guitar. And we'd always sing songs, and he used to make up the songs. What type of songs? Folk songs? Songs that I have never heard before, or words I have never heard before, put together in such beautiful manners. Some were happy, some were left me with an open head. Left me just sitting there like I was dead. Did you call your group by any name, Susan? Among ourselves, we called ourselves the family. A family like no other family. In terms of love or hate, how would you describe the family? Love, completely. It was love in the group. Complete love. We never despised anybody. We never hated anybody. We took anybody in that wanted to come in, that was willing to give up everything they had for us. We all gave up each other's wants for each other. You loved other people then? Most definitely. We loved the whole world. Everything in it. Everything. You loved people in addition to your family. Of course. Do you have a child, Susan? Yes, I do. And what is the child's name? Zozizze Zadfrak. This is what it says in the transcript. When did you have this child, Susan? October 7th, last year. At the Spahn Ranch? Yes. Did Charlie deliver the baby? Yes, he did, along with 15 other girls. Did Charlie frequently deliver babies that you girls would have? Well, we only delivered 2 babies. He delivered 3 babies. One was Marie Theresa Bruner's baby, and he didn't actually deliver that. I did. And the baby was born breech birth, but in perfect health. And my son, Charlie, delivered, and one of the girls held me in an easy position. Charlie was the midwife, so to speak. So to speak, yes. He was more with us women than he was with the men. Susan, were you living at the Spahn Ranch on the date, August the 8th, 1969? Yes. Mr. Foreman, the following testimony will relate to the first 5 counts of the proposed indictment, plus count number 8 of the proposed indictment. Susan, on the date August 8th, 1969, did Charlie Manson instruct you and some other members of the family to do anything? I never recall getting any actual instructions from Charlie, other than getting a change of clothing and a knife, and was told to do exactly what Tex told me to do. So Charlie told you on August 8th, 1969, to get a fresh change of clothing, get a knife, and do whatever Tex told you to do? Yes. Mr. Foreman, I here have a photograph of a male Caucasian. May it be marked Grand Jury Exhibit Number 4 for identification? It may be so marked. I show you Grand Jury Exhibit Number 4, Susan. Do you know who is shown in this photograph? Yes, I do. Who is that? That is Tex. Is he also known as Charles? Yes. Hereafter in your testimony, when you say Charles, will you be referring to Charles Manson or to Tex? Charles Manson. I always call him Tex. Tex, and once in a while, I will use the phrase Charles. Is Tex's name also Charles Montgomery? That I don't know. Did Charlie, now when I say Charlie, I'm not referring to Tex, but to Charles Manson, did he instruct any other members of this group or tell any other members of the group to do anything that day? During the day, I don't particularly recall. I must remind you that this whole experience seems like it happened 1,000 years ago. I feel I have lived 1,000 lifetimes since then. Mr. Foreman, I have here a photograph of a female Caucasian. May it be marked Grand Jury Exhibit Number 5 for identification? It may be so marked. I show you Grand Jury Exhibit Number 5 for identification. Do you know who is shown in that photograph, Susan? Yes. Who is that? Linda Kasabian. Did Charlie indicate to you that the type of clothing you should take should be dark clothing? He told me that the type of clothing I should wear should be dark clothing, and the clothes that I would take along with me should be, didn't matter, just a change of clothes. Wear dark clothes. Did you, in fact, put on a pair or a dark clothing outfit? Yes, I did. Did you pick up a fresh change of clothing? Yes. Did Charlie tell you where you were going to go? No. Did you, in fact, go anywhere on the evening of August the 9th, 1969? Yes. You got into a car at the Spahn Ranch? Yes. And who was in the car with you? Tex. You know her as Patricia. I know her as Katie. Katie, that is Patricia Krenwinkel? Yes, I always call her Katie. Who else? Linda Kasabian and myself. So there was you, Tex, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel. Is that correct? Yes. About what time of day did you leave the Spahn Ranch? It was late in the evening. I don't know. Time is irrelevant to me. You say late in the evening. You mean 11 p.m. thereabouts? Could have been. Who drove the car? Tex. Did Tex tell you where you were going to go? He told us that we were going to a house up on the hill that used to belong to Terry Melcher. And the only reason why we were going to that house was because Tex knew the outline of the house. Did Tex tell you that he knew the interior of the house? Yes, he described it to us as we were traveling. How did Tex describe the interior of the house to you? Did he describe where the rooms were located in relation to each other? Yes. Did Charlie Manson ever tell you that he had been to Terry Melcher's former residence? No, not to my recall. Did Tex tell you that he had been at one time to Terry Melcher's former residence? Yes. He said that he and Charlie had been there talking to Terry, and I think he said with Dennis. Don't quote me on that because I don't know if he said with Dennis. You say Dennis. Do you mean Dennis Wilson? Yes. Do you mean a performer with the Beach Boys? Yes. The recording outfit? Yes. Did Tex tell you while you were driving to the former residence of Terry Melcher? Did he tell you that Terry Melcher no longer lived there? Yes. When you and Tex and Patricia Krenwinkel and Linda Kasabian left the ranch, did Manson stay at the ranch? Yes, he did. What type of car was Tex driving with you and the other girls in it? It was a 4-door Ford, yellow and white. It was an older car, and it didn't have a back seat, just the floor bed. Do you know whose car it was? It belonged to, I think, the foreman on the ranch. Do you know his name? Johnny is all I know him by, and Johnny frequently let us use his car. He had no knowledge what we ever used the car for. Did Charlie give you the car to use that night? Yes. When I say Charlie, again, I am referring to Charles Manson. Charlie Manson, yes. Not Charlie Montgomery. Do you understand that? Yes. As you left the ranch that night, did Charlie Manson see you off? Oh, I just remember sitting in the back seat of the car and waving goodbye. To Charlie Manson? To everybody. Charlie, there were other people out there. Incidentally, do you know whatever happened to this particular car, this Ford? I believe it was confiscated by the Malibu Sheriff's Station on a raid. On August the 16th, 1969? I believe that is the date. At the Spahn Ranch? Yes. They impounded the car? Yes. Did you and the others take anything with you when you left the Spahn Ranch on the evening of August the 8th, 1969? There was a rope in the back seat of the car when I got in there. And there was a set of bolt cutters in the back seat of the car. Tex had a gun. I had a knife. Linda had a knife. Katie had a knife. And to my best knowledge, I believe Tex had a knife. You will see why I'm not sure whether he had it or not, but it makes sense that he did. All three of you girls had a knife. Is that correct? Yes. Was the rope already in the car when you got in the car? How about the bolt cutters? They were already in the car. Were you barefooted that night? Yes, I was, my feet. I had quite a few sores on my feet from infection, and I couldn't wear shoes. Did Tex drive you directly to Terry Melcher's former residence? We sort of got lost on the way. I think we took a wrong turn and ended up somewhere to Mulholland, and we went directly there. What did you discuss in the car, Susan, as you drove to Terry Melcher's former residence? Who said what? Tex did most of the talking. In fact, to my recall, he did all of the talking. Did Tex tell you why he and you three girls were going to Terry Melcher's former residence? To get all of their money and to kill whoever was there. It didn't make a difference who was there. You were told to kill them. Is that correct? Yes. Mr. Foreman, I have here an aerial photograph of a residence. May it be marked Grand Jury Exhibit Number 6? It may be so marked. Susan, I show you Grand Jury Exhibit Number 6. Is this a photograph of this residence where Tex drove you that night? Yes. Do you know what time you arrived at that residence? I just know it was late at night. Around midnight? Possibly. Mr. Foreman, there is a diagram on the wall directly behind you. May that be marked Grand Jury Exhibit Number 7, I believe, for identification? It may be so marked. Susan, looking at this diagram on the wall, could you step down off the witness stand, Susan, and walk around here and approach the diagram on the wall? Do we have a pointer? There's one on the tray. Susan, can you tell these members of the grand jury where Tex parked the car when you arrived at the residence? Right here, up this way. There could be another house over there. We parked between the power pole and the next door neighbor's house. So the place where Tex parked the car would be north of this diagram here, not shown on this diagram. Is that correct? Counsel, I believe north is pointing. That's right. So that would be west to the top of the diagram in a westerly direction of the point located, indicated power pole on exhibit number 7. The place where Tex parked the car is not shown on this diagram. Is that correct, Susan? Correct. What happened after Tex parked the car? Well, it was kind of like we were all confused. I didn't know what was going on. There was a lot of confusion at that time because I didn't know what was going on, but I know that Tex got out of the car. Tex got the bolt cutters, went to the power pole. You are pointing to right there. A portion of the diagram. The part on the diagram that says power pole at the top of the diagram. Yes. What did Tex do when he approached the power pole? He climbed up it and cut 2 lines. The wires? 2 wires that led to the house, to this house. You say this house, and you are referring to a group of rooms as a house in the At the house in the composite, is that correct? Yes. Do you recognize this house as the one that is shown in the photograph I just showed you? Yes, I do. All right. What did what did Tex do after he cut the lines? He climbed back down, told all of us to get into the car, put the bolt cutters back in the car, and drove back down the hill and parked on a side street. This is not shown on this diagram, Susan? That is correct. What happened next? Then he told us to get our changes of clothes, and we all walked back up the hill and walked to this fence. Now, when you say this fence, I see the word gate on the diagram. Did you walk up to the gate? We walked up to the gate, but we didn't want to touch it because we thought there may be an alarm system or electricity running through it. Is there a fence adjacent to this gate? Yes, there is. On the left and right? Yes. Now, what did you do after you approached the gate area? We looked for a way to get over the gate, and we noticed that you say, get over the gate. Get over the fence. All right. We walked over this way. It's not shown on the diagram, and there's a hill that goes up like this next to the fence. We walked up to the side of the hill and could see that we could get over the fence easier there than getting over the fence where the gate is. Now, facing the gate that night was the fence to your right? Yes. So the fence, then, would then be to the left. Left of where I'm pointing now, but it would have been to your right. That is correct. South on this diagram, is that correct, assuming that this is north? Uh-huh. What happened after you approached the fence? I was told to go over first, so I threw my change of clothes over the fence and held the knife between my teeth and got my pants caught on the part of the fence and had to kind of boost myself up and lift from where I was caught off of the fence. I fell into the bushes on the other side of the fence, and I was followed by the 3 other people. You say 3 other people. You mean Tex, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Lydia Kasabian? Right. What happened next? Then we were going to move forward in this direction. Toward the residence? Toward the residence, and we saw lights coming from, apparently, this car. You say this car. Are you referring to a little rectangle here that was Parents' 2-door Rambler MPK 308? Right. Was this car in motion, would you say? I didn't actually see the car. I just saw the headlights.